Today, we focus on South Korea's arms exports. International arms demand is on the rise, and South Korea has been steadily asserting its presence in the defense trade. Russia's invasion of Ukraine has prompted European countries to rush to beef up their national security. France is one. Domestic media say its government has proposed a defense budget of almost $45 billion for 2023. That's up $3 billion from this year. Germany has spent over $51 billion this year on defense, and it will earmark new spending of more than $100 billion for its defense budget. Sweden has applied for admission to NATO. Its defense spending is expected to rise to the equivalent of 2% of its GDP, which NATO aims to require of its members. Now, South Korea is not directly supplying Ukraine with weapons, but it has expanded its exports to neighboring European countries. Let's find out more.
The South Korean military is performing exercises near the capital of Seoul as part of a trade expo. The country is promoting its readily deployable arms, like tanks and self-propelled artillery. This demonstration is showcasing 100 weapons of 23 varieties. High-ranking defense officials from around the world have gathered to observe their performance.
The equipment is of extremely high quality. I think the world is changing. Everyone is investing more in defense. That also goes for Denmark.
In the 70 years since the armistice of the Korean War, South Korea has consistently developed its domestic arms industry, even with changes of government, to face the North. Arms can be stored and used years after being produced and deployed. So many domestic weapons factories had reduced their output. This trend changed in the 21st century when Seoul turned to exports as a way to fund the defense industry. This new focus has paid off. South Korea's arms export ranking jumped from 14th in the world to 8th in 2021. South Korea saw opportunities following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. It inked a deal with Poland, which agreed to buy 980 of its tanks, 48 fighter jets, and other items. The contract's total value is estimated to be at least $10 billion. Poland has provided Ukraine with a significant number of arms, such as tanks. So it says it is rushing to replenish its own supply by purchasing from South Korea. The main selling points of South Korean arms are affordability and compatibility. They're cheaper than those from America and some other countries, and they can be used with NATO's weapon systems. Also at the expo was the Minister of Defense from Slovakia, another of Ukraine's neighbors.
We made the acquisition of F-16 planes, and now we are seeking for training jets that includes possibility here in Korea.
An expert explains Korea's ramped-up arms exports are closely linked to its diplomatic strategy to enhance its clout in the international community.
나토라든지 EU라든지
The government's goal is not only to export weapons to NATO and EU countries, but also to find a strategic partner role.
것들이 뭘까를 찾는 게 저희들이 가장 중요한 목표입니다. 그래서
At the same time, he points out the defense trade comes with responsibility.
우리 무기가 다른 지역으로 특히
The government must make sure Korean weapons do not fall into the wrong hands, especially hostile forces. So weapons deals are closely examined by a government advisory committee. The supplier has an important ethical responsibility to ensure arms do not end up in unstable nations.
철저한 책임이자 윤리다.
We now go to NHK World's Kim Chan-ju in Seoul. So, Chan-ju, can you tell us more about what's behind this expansion of South Korea's defense industry? I mean, is this a recent development?
Sure, Aki. Of course, the situation in Ukraine has pushed up sales, but South Korea's rise to prominence in the arms trade came over decades. Government involvement in the defense industry began in the 70s under the slogan "Independent Self-Defense." That has been a major factor. Over the last decade or so, successive leaders have been the top arms salespeople. As recently as June, President Yoon Suk-yeol visited Europe for the NATO summit and made a sales pitch on defense cooperation to the leaders in attendance. The South Korean government's goal is to rise from 8th to 4th in global arms exports, and they're poised to do so.
And Chanju, how do people at home feel about their country becoming one of the world's biggest weapons suppliers?
Well, generally, South Koreans are positive. When the critical contract with Poland was sealed, all the major media outlets called it a massive step forward. I believe part of this reaction is because South Korea has to live with the threat of the North, and all men are required to serve a stint in the military. So there has historically been a strong awareness of the importance of national defense. A former South Korean official involved in the defense industry policy put it this way: "It's true that arms trade expansion is a special demand of war, but the reality is that no country can defend itself without weapons." President Yoon Suk-yeol has also stated that the government will foster the defense industry as a strategic traction force that will drive economic growth. He's promoting it as a national agenda.
Thank you for your analysis, Tianju. NHK World's Kim Tianju in Seoul.